Ladies and gentlemen, welcome today to another post-race analysis video. We're going to recap everything that happened in yesterday's race at the Homestead-Miami Speedway for the NASCAR Cup Series. It was the third race of the season, and our pole sitter, Denny Hamlin, had to drop to the rear as well as a couple other drivers like Corey LaJoie and Alex Bowman for the start of yesterday's race. That led Joey Logano to start on the pole. So we're going to take you through chronological order from that point on, all the way to the end of the race, my thoughts on the race overall. So thanks for everybody tuning in here today. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content as we hop on into the rest of the video. As Joey Logano led the field to the green flag, he was able to lead for about the first 10 to 15 laps of the race before his teammate Brad Keselowski ended up jumping to the lead from that point on, and Brad was able to lead by the time the competition yellow came out at lap 25. After the pit stops came out and another restart, Keselowski was able to get to the lead, but the big surprise of stage number one was Chris Buescher being able to charge himself from starting outside the top 10 all the way to the front of the field, race Keselowski for the lead, pass Keselowski for the lead, and pull away from Brad and the rest of the field as well. A late caution came out in stage one with about 14 laps to go for James Davidson blowing an engine. And after that had happened, we had set ourselves up for another restart. After pit stops had happened, and Chris Buescher actually lost the lead back to Keselowski on the restart, but with about a couple laps to go in the stage, Buescher was able to get back around him and hold on as Chris Buescher, surprisingly, wins stage number one. And at the beginning of stage two, Chase Elliott shot basically out of nowhere on the restart after finishing 8th at the end of stage number one to get to the lead. An amazing restart there, but he couldn't hold on for long before Buescher was able to get right back around him again. The Hendrick Chevrolets looked strong all day long. Especially in the first half of the race, where all four of the Hendrick Chevrolets were pretty much running in the top 6 or 7 for most of the first half of the race, especially once Elliott got up there. But a lot of the guys that started off the race strong didn't necessarily finish the race strong, and that started right about the midway point of stage 2 when Chris Buescher lost the lead to, at the time, Martin Truex Jr. Truex went on to lead a lot of laps before we had another caution for another engine failure at the end of stage 2 that came from the hands of Corey LaJoie. That set up a late one-lap green-white checker shootout to decide the stage 2 winner, where William Byron went from third to first on the restart, passing both Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin coming off of turn 4 to win stage 2. Hamlin tried to throw a late block on Truex on the exit of the corner that Truex was not exactly very happy about in his comments with his team on the radio after that block by Denny Hamlin, rightfully so. But Hamlin was trying to win the stage. If Hamlin would have won that stage, that would give him 4 stage wins in the first 3 races of the season, so he was definitely going for a lot. Hamlin looks very strong this season, and after starting at the back, it took him a little bit longer than most people expected for him to get to the front of the field, but he got to the front at that point in time. He just couldn't hold on to win the stage after that block on Truex broke both his momentum as well as Truex's, leaving Byron, a non-JGR Toyota, on the inside to win it. The stage 2 results look like this. William Byron goes on to win stage 2, Denny Hamlin second. Kurt Busch ended up third. Truex fell back to fourth on that last lap. Kyle Larson stays in the top 5, finishing 5th. Chris Buescher falls back to 6th as he was fading back by the end of stage 2 and did not have a good restart there as well. Kevin Harvick, who was bouncing back after a rough start today, finishing 7th at the end of stage 2. Ryan Blaney, from pretty much out of nowhere, was running 15th to 20th most of the race again, but he sneaks in there with a good restart late to finish 8th in stage number 2, with Bowman 9th and Brad Keselowski rounding out the top 10. And finally, into the last stage of the race. This is where you really start to see how things were unfolding, who was fast at the end of the day. Remember, with these later start times that NASCAR has been implementing over the last couple years, especially in the early season races and the late season races, when it starts to get darker a little bit earlier versus the summer months where it's going to be light outside till 8, 9 o'clock at night, especially if the race is in the Eastern time zone that they're easily going to get the race in. And it's going to be all throughout the course of the day, through warmer parts of the day. But in a race like Homestead, with it being at the beginning of the season, and we kind of saw it with the Daytona Road Course a little bit last week as well, where the race starts in the daylight hours with it being a 3 to 3:30 start time, it doesn't end until it becomes completely dark outside. So usually a lot of the faster cars you're going to see at the early going of the season, or at least until daylight savings probably hits this week, are probably not going to run as well early in the race compared to late in the race and vice versa. So that's why we saw a lot of drivers who were running strong at the beginning of the race in stage 1, stage 2 falter late. Chris Buescher was probably the biggest example of that, falling back outside the top 10 quickly on this final, or I should say the restart to the final stage with 100 laps to go. As he quickly fell outside of the top 10. There were other drivers that weren't quite as strong as what they were in the beginning, like Brad Keselowski. He didn't end up finding himself in the top 10 at the end of the day. Logano faltered pretty much outside the top 15 late, and Chase Elliott as well, despite the fact that Elliott's teammates all ran pretty much inside the top 10 the rest of the day. We get closer to the end of the race with just over 60 laps to go. In fact, 67 laps to go. Aric Almirola tried to clear Ryan Blaney for position. Both drivers were still outside the top 10 at the time and pretty much outside the top 10 for most of the day up to that point. And Almirola was not clear of Blaney, basically put both him and Blaney in the wall, bringing out our third caution for incident, not including the stage breaks and the competition yellow at the start of the race. With that caution coming out, that would actually play out to be the final caution of the race, and with it coming with 67 laps to go, it put a lot of these guys in a particular fuel window by the time they went green with 60 laps to go. Who could make it on fuel to the end, and who could have the advantage and save their tires at the beginning of the run to have it there late? William Byron's team kind of failed him on pit road, losing not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 spots on pit road, restarting him back in 6th place, leaving Martin Truex Jr. with the lead. On that same pit stop under caution, Denny Hamlin, who was up there at the front of the field as well, was caught for speeding on pit road, sending him to the back, and because there wasn't another caution the rest of the race, Hamlin was pretty much left out to dry as far as his chances of trying to cut through the field and win the race, especially when the 24 car of William Byron that won stage 2 was able to get back to the lead once again on that restart. It only took him about 3 laps, and from that point on, it was over as long as he could make it on fuel. William Byron pulled out to as much as a 6-second lead at one point in time over the drivers that were battling for second place. That ended up being Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, towards the end of the race. Tyler Reddick, who was 12 seconds off the lead with about 25 laps to go, was cutting down so much time as if he might have saved a little bit of fuel and maybe a little bit too much by his remarks in the post-race afterwards in his interview, that he was upset that he might have saved a little too much and made a couple mistakes on that restart that put him a little further back in traffic than what he wanted. By the time he came up through the field, he was able to get to second in the closing laps, but he was still about 2.5 seconds roughly off the lead by the time the checkered flag waved. And William Byron was able to get his second career win and his first win of the young 2021 season. We were live streaming the race yesterday, and coincidentally enough, I called, or I should say somebody in the chat had commented, who do you think is the most overrated driver in NASCAR? And it was a debate between Austin Dillon and William Byron. And sure enough, Byron goes on to win the race pretty much out of nowhere, despite the fact, I should say, going into the race. He had a strong car. He led 102 laps. It was the most laps led in the race. He definitely deserved it. He ran out in front, never made a mistake when he was out there, and especially bounced back after his pit crew lost him 5 spots under that last pit stop. Under the caution break, it did not faze William Byron at all as he goes on to win. What a start to the season with these 3 unlikely winners, 2 of which I didn't even have making the playoffs in my preseason prediction. I figured Bell might have been able to sneak in as a bubble driver on points this season. I did not have Michael McDowell winning a race, especially the Daytona 500, and I did not have William Byron winning a race this season either, and therefore I didn't have him making the playoffs. So the fact that 2 of those drivers are already clinched after the first 3 races, that means we're going to see some very competitive cars missing the playoffs this year. Some drivers that I would have expected, to miss the playoffs, maybe a Hendrick car like Byron, but all 4 Hendrick cars look really fast this year. I don't know. It's going to be tough to say. You look at those drivers that only win 1 race a year, like a Ryan Blaney who's struggling early in the season. Almirola's struggling early in the season. Matt DiBenedetto is very much struggling this year. He hasn't finished better than 28th in the first 3 races of the year. Another guy that's struggling is Chase Briscoe. I know he's a rookie, but a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for him. I did as well. I thought he could get a win. He still can get a win. It's early in the season. You might have to win a race to make the playoffs this year. Points might not be enough the way we're shaping things to go. Once we get those regular drivers to start winning, like a Kevin Harvick, like Denny Hamlin, like a Martin Truex Jr., we could go 6, 7, 8 races into the season before we get a repeat winner at this point, especially when you look at the tracks We have coming, of course, Dirt Bristol could maybe throw a guy like Larson into winning a race right there. You look at Talladega early in the season, obviously Daytona later in the fall, you could see another upset winner. If we get another one or two upset winners this year, I think you're going to look at a guy like Blaney, like Bowman, if he can't get a win in the regular season, like Almirola, Custer, these guys that have won races before, not being able to find their way to victory lane in the regular season, that could cost them mightily. And as a Ryan Blaney fan, and him struggling to run inside the top 15, it looks very, very challenging because especially last year when he scored the most stage points throughout the course of the year, he did have one win in the season, and it was fairly early, so there was really no pressure throughout the regular season for him to make it into the playoffs. That obviously costed him in his round of 16 run because he got eliminated early. Man, oh man, this season is shaping up to be something wild. We saw a guy like Chris Buescher running so well in the early going of the race. If they could just capitalize and put a full race together, that'll be something. We'll take a rundown of the finishing order right here. William Byron with the win, as mentioned, his second career win, first of the young season. Tyler Reddick finishes second, with Martin Truex Jr. coming up P3. Finishing fourth was Kyle Larson. Kevin Harvick with another top five. He has now finished fourth, fifth, or sixth in the first three races of the season, so very similar start to where he was last year. Before the COVID pandemic came into play, those first four races, he was in the top 10 all four, and then they came back from the pandemic break, that 2-month break, and boy, Harvick just started tearing off. That's when he won all 9 races from that point on. Michael McDowell has 3 straight top 10 finishes. In fact, 3 straight top 7 finishes to start the season, including that win in the Daytona 500, sitting himself in the top 10 in points automatically. He finishes 6th today. Ryan Newman is going to finish 7th. He was like Chris Buescher, ran well early on, but the difference between Buescher and Newman is that Newman was just stagnated inside the back half of the top 10 all day, never really left the top 10 for most of the day. Buescher did fall all the way back by the finish. Kurt Busch ends up finishing 8th. He exceeded my expectations. He was on the don't-haves throughout the course of the day and actually had to pit because of a loose wheel. With about maybe 40, 45 laps to go after that last pit stop, it still comes back to finish 8th place when the field got pretty well spaced apart there. He was about 16 seconds off the lead at the finish, but just the fact that goes to show how much those fresh tires really mattered. Just 15 to 20 lap fresher tires, and he probably made up about a full lap on the race leader or the race winner by the end of the race. So could you imagine if he might have pitted at the halfway mark, if his tire would have came apart? Would that have been a strategy call by the end of the race to have won the thing? Who knows? Alex Bowman finishes 9th. He pretty much ran inside the top 10 all day, and Kyle Busch will round out the top 10 after struggling pretty much all day, narrowly getting that top 10 by the end of the race, so good for him. So here is a look at how the fantasy team did. Denny Hamlin came back to finish 11th. He did score a lot of stage points, though, all of them in stage number 2. So not a bad day. He was one of the must-haves in the lineup. Kevin Harvick was my pick to win the race. He was also one of my other must-haves as well. He didn't start off the day very well, but he ended up scoring a few stage points as well as getting a top 5, so good run for him. Kyle Larson was one of my sleeper picks. So was Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick. Unfortunately, I had Reddick in the garage. All three of those guys pretty much had a decent day. Austin Dillon, he scored stage points early in the race, but he ended up not getting a top 10. He finished in the top dozen in the last 5 races at Homestead going in, so that's why I had him in the lineup. But he kind of faltered late, so he didn't quite live up to my expectations for him. But as far as the other sleeper picks of Larson and Reddick, they did perform very, very well, both finishing inside the top 4. And Kyle Busch was one of the other must-haves, and he did get a top 10 at the end of the day, so I guess it ended up working out somewhat, but I lost out on 8 points there, unfortunately, because Reddick was running so bad earlier in the race. He was about to go lap down. Who would have thought he could have turned it around in that final stage, but boy, did he show everybody that he was able to do so. And I wasted a pick for Kyle Busch, which I would imagine I'm probably going to use more than Tyler Reddick this year, so that's kind of a bummer too. As far as the bonus picks go, it did not save it this week. I would have had 5 bonus points. I did look. The only bonus points I would have gotten was for Harvick being the top Ford driver. Everything else, as far as the race winner, top Chevy, and all that stuff for the other bonus points, I wouldn't have gotten anyway, so I'll be honest with you guys there. But I should have had 5 more points no matter what. And my mistake on putting Reddick in the garage over Kyle Busch. Outside of that, though, pretty good week. And I did end up winning this week in fantasy, so I guess it'll just be me by myself for the predictions video for next week, but that goes to show you guys got to beat me. It was very, very close, so I think the top 4 were within 2 points, so it was pretty close, even though my bonus picks didn't save, and I made the mistake with not putting Reddick in the starting lineup instead of Kyle Busch, but that part is on me. Thanks for everybody watching today. Like, share, and subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. I will see you guys for a predictions video again later next week for the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas. Hope to see you guys then. We'll be live streaming a double header here tonight on NASCAR 05, so tune in for that. Our first race will be starting at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with the second race for the Truck Series being immediately after the finish of that one. So thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you guys later.